How do I, 31F, tell my son, 8, that his father, 28M, and I are no longer together? My ex and I broke up in February of this year after almost 9.5 years of being together. Prior to that, and despite all the problems, we tried to show our son that we were still in a loving relationship. When we finally broke up, it was messy. It was immediately followed by the pandemic and the lockdowns, and so my son thinks that his dad, whom he absolutely adores, is not with us at home because of it. But now, with everything easing up and both of us having new relationships, we feel that we should start explaining to our son about our breakup. At the end of the day, I just want him to know that he will always have a family in us, albeit different from traditional, and that we will always love him, although not as parents who are together. I also don't want him to see my new boyfriend as the villain in his story. Too long didn't read. What is the best way to break it to an 8 years / show that his parents are no longer together? However you do it, realize at his age he is smarter than you think. My grandma left my grandpa after 35 years of marriage when I was 8. Didn't know anything about the financial or verbal abuse that was constant before I was born, but faded as my grandfather got older and mellow. I didn't know much of the history, but I understood what was happening. What was really weird was that my grandfather sat me down and said they're getting divorced. I already knew, and it wasn't my fault, and they would still be my grandparents but separate. I knew at that age that I had nothing to do with their shit and felt really uncomfortable being talked to like I was a complete moron. I grew up in a broken house. The most important part is transparency. Be honest. And whatever you do, never put your son in the middle of your breakup / drama. What you say is important because it will form his expectations of relationships and what is important. Obviously it should be tailored to what values you wish to instill in him, but this is what I would say. There are 3 important aspects in a relationship: love, mutual respect, and compatibility. Mutual respect means no abuse, caring about how your actions impact the other person, compromise, etc. Love is the emotional aspect. Compatibility is the hardest part to get right, and it's about finding someone who fits with you. Your father and I have realized that we are no longer compatible with each other and we have broken up. But we still respect and love each other, even it's a different kind of love, and we are still a family. I want you to know that when you're older, it's okay for you to end relationships if they don't have all 3 of these aspects. Mutual respect being the biggest deal breaker of the 3. It'd wait a bit longer for this news to sink in before either of you talk to him about dating other people or introduce other people. Child of several divorces, parents split when I was 6. Honestly, telling him is probably the least important thing. Just make sure he knows you and his father both love him very much, and sometimes mommies and daddies are just happier when they live in separate houses. Let him know he'll be able to see both parents lots, and remind him that you both love him very much. Going forward, both parents need to not bad talk the other parent in front of him. That was probably the most confusing thing as a child. Something I struggled with when my parents split was actually asking questions, and I was 18. So make that a clear thing, that if he asks you won't be upset or angry, because it wasn't until this year, 2 years later and I'm 20, that finally started asking the whys and how comes. It cleared up a lot for me, especially because I had a lot of underlying and unspoken resentment that I didn't deal with because I didn't know what or how to ask. Best of luck to all parties involved. My friend, 30F, keeps joking that I, 30F, should have sex with her husband, 30M. Post is what the title says, close friend, and she has joked about this in front of her husband, and her husband would go with the joke too. I'm not sure where it's coming from, but it sure as hell makes me feel uncomfortable. She has once also talked about how her husband follows a lot of Instagram girls and she just lets him. So I'm suspecting now maybe she jokes about this from a place of insecurity. Anyway, it makes me feel not only uncomfortable but also disrespected. It also makes me not want to hang out with them anymore. At the same time, I'm pretty non-confrontational, so I'm afraid if I tell her how the jokes make me feel she'd think I've overblown this and start backing off too. Would you back off for a while or call it out? To call out, I don't think this has anything to do with like any sexual fantasies or whatever. Too long didn't read. Close friend keeps joking that her husband and I should have sex. Edit, I wanted to add more details. We've been friends for 11 years and she's been married for 3 years. These sorts of jokes, weird vibes started this year. Haha, yeah, please keep my out of your fantasies, thanks. Have you considered that they may be swingers? Maybe she likes watching her husband with other women? I had a GF like that once. At the same time, I'm pretty non-confrontational, so I'm afraid if I tell her how the jokes make me feel she'd think I've overblown this and start backing off too. If please stop talking about your husband fucking me makes her back off your friendship, maybe that's okay. If keeping silent means either you keep feeling uncomfortable or you start avoiding them, and speaking up means either they cut it out or they start avoiding you, then speaking up is strictly better, right? You don't have to make a big deal out of it. Just hey, I really don't find that funny. Please stop saying it. At a certain point, if she has a problem, it's because she has a problem, and there was no better way you could have handled it on your end. If she keeps saying it, it's not a joke. You need to tell her how you feel. If you're uncomfortable, then say it. No need for her to keep doing so. Cousin's husband smacked my ass and I'm super uncomfortable. My cousin, 29F, who I've been close with for my entire life, has a husband, 30-ish, whose manners I, 24F, would describe as, well, uncivilized to say the least. To get to the point, we were all in the kitchen, my cousin, her husband, and I. My boyfriend wasn't with us at the time, at our grandmother's house. I was washing the dishes, and my cousin was sitting across the room. Her husband is standing next to me. All of a sudden, this fucking guy slaps my ass. I'm talking full ass smack, with the palm of his hand. I simply froze. I was absolutely horrified, mortified, humiliated, embarrassed, and so uncomfortable. I wanted to cry. I managed to sputter out something to the effect of, "Why did you just do that? Why would you do that?" Exclamation mark, to which their response was complete surprise and bewilderment. They were genuinely taken aback at the fact that I reacted the way I did. They both immediately went into defensive mode, saying that it was just a joke. Didn't I see that my cousin was right there? And it can't have been in a sexual way. It was just a joke. It was supposed to be funny. All their friends do stuff like this all the time and they think it's funny. Obviously, I disagree. I was so shocked. I don't even remember exactly what I said, but I made it clear that I was angry, uncomfortable, and this was highly inappropriate. They said they were sorry, but they also really made me feel kind of stupid for being so uncomfortable, like as if I'm some kind of prude who just has no sense of humor. Am I crazy? In my eyes, it's so beyond unacceptable to smack a woman's ass like that, unless you have the kind of relationship that permits that, obviously. I don't understand how they could both have seen this as a funny joke. How could I not be mad about this? I felt really violated. This is my body and you have zero right to it, and I don't care if you thought it would be a joke. I told my boyfriend about it today because, well, I wanted to. And of course he reacted by being really angry at this guy for having the nerve to do that. My boyfriend feels, as I do, that this was a gesture of blatant disrespect and I don't want to have anything to do with my cousin's husband anymore, nor does my boyfriend. Well, my boyfriend messaged the husband because he was, and is, really angry about this. My cousin sent me back the screenshot of my boyfriend's text saying this to me: "You've done a great job, clapping hands, clapping hands, clapping hands, for what was meant as an innocent joke. We understood you got mad and both apologized. Had no idea things would end up like this, and there was no single ounce of disrespect. But gee, this is great. Guess I needed a good cry for today. They're kind of making me feel like I'm blowing things out of proportion and ruining my relationship with my cousin and her husband for nothing. Am I crazy? Should I back down and let this go?" Too long didn't read. Cousin's husband smacked my ass and I got really upset about it. They are now making me feel like I'm overreacting. Sexual assault is just a joke. God, what's wrong with you for not thinking it's funny? Tell your cousin maybe her husband should learn that sexually assaulting women isn't fucking funny, and until he does they aren't welcome around you anymore. You're not blowing things out of proportion, they're minimizing how wildly inappropriate his actions were. Dude is lucky to still have both his hands intact. I would let her know that an apology doesn't excuse their continued dismissal of your feelings or lack of recognition of your boundaries, and leave it at that and cut back contact unless he reaches out and sincerely apologizes to both you and your boyfriend. Or you made her cry because her boyfriend won't keep his hands to himself. You must be so mean. Ask him to explain the joke. Where was the humor? Is it humorous to physically sexually humiliate assault someone who is doing menial chores? That's some aristocratic bullshit. It was a power play. He thought he could do anything he wants and you'd be too upset or embarrassed to say anything. You called his bluff. Oopsies. Reddit knows that if ass slapping were a normal, funny thing that in your family do to each other, you would not be reacting the way you are. Ash, but please, for fun, make him explain the joke to you. Do it in person so you can see them squirm. You owe that to yourself on what will be the last time you see in person. It was a power play. He thought he could do anything he wants and you'd be too upset or embarrassed to say anything. Yeah. I got a sinking feeling that this was him testing the waters, and if she hadn't reacted like this or let her cousin know he'd done this, he would have continued pushing the boundaries. It's not that I'm calling him a rapist, but I'm not calling him a rapist. They both immediately went into defensive mode, saying that it was a joke. I heard somewhere, the person telling the joke doesn't get to decide if it's funny, the person on the receiving end does. If you didn't find it funny, it's not a joke anymore. Their attempt at minimizing, gaslighting, and emotional manipulation is just insult to injury.